The void of space, infinite and cold, wrapped around the shining capital world of the Dranaxis Unity like a jewel in velvet. Its orbit glittered with defensive satellites, their surfaces sleek and polished, reflecting the warm glow of twin suns. Below, the planet's surface was a marvel of engineering and artistry, with towering crystalline spires stretching skyward, refracting sunlight into cascading rainbows. Rivers of liquid light coursed through the streets, fueling the technological marvels that sustained the Unity's unparalleled civilization. Yet beneath this serene facade, tension coiled like a serpent ready to strike. High Chancellor Thraxian Vel strode through the Grand Council chamber, his polished boots clicking against the obsidian floor. The air hummed faintly, carrying the scent of ionized energy from the holographic displays that filled the room with shifting maps of the galaxy. The chamber's dome arched above him, its surface adorned with pulsating constellations that mirrored the Unity's star-spanning domain. But those constellations were marred now, splashed with angry red markers denoting the encroaching Pharion swarm. "They are consuming our border systems faster than we can evacuate them," Thraxian announced, his voice sharp enough to cut through the murmur of the gathered council members. His silver-hued face betrayed none of the fear gnawing at his core, but his clenched fists spoke volumes. "We have weeks, not months, before they reach our inner colonies." A murmur spread through the chamber, an anxious undercurrent that swelled like an unspoken scream. Then, a voice rose from the shadows at the edge of the room. "We have begun activation protocols." Dr. Irixa Rallin, her dark robes shimmering faintly with embedded circuitry, stepped into the light. Her yellow eyes gleamed with fervor as she gestured to the central holomap, which shifted to reveal a sleek pedestal surrounded by shimmering energy fields. Resting atop it was the Unity's last hope, Archeon Prime. "Project Archeon Prime," she said, her voice measured but brimming with intensity. "The pinnacle of Dranaxis ingenuity. It is not merely armor, it is a symbiotic force. It will choose its host, amplify their potential, and grant them abilities beyond imagination. It is the only chance we have to stand against the swarm." "And yet," interjected General Cale Theron, his obsidian armor catching the flickering light, "it has chosen no one. Every warrior, every strategist we have offered, it rejects them all. Perhaps the armor itself is flawed." "It is not flawed," Dr. Rallin shot back, her tone sharp. "It is discerning. It will choose the one who is truly worthy, even if we do not yet understand its criteria." The council erupted in heated debate, voices colliding in a cacophony of fear and frustration. Thraxian raised a hand, silencing the room. His eyes bore into Rallin. "And if no one is chosen?" Dr. Rallin hesitated, her gaze falling to the hologram as if searching its depths for answers. "Then we fail," she admitted. The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy as a collapsing star. Light years away, Earth basked in the glow of its own sun, oblivious to the galactic crisis unfolding in the far reaches of space. Alex Mercer leaned against the railing of a balcony, his fingers wrapped around a mug of lukewarm coffee. The sprawling capital of New Geneva stretched out below him, a patchwork of glass and steel skyscrapers interwoven with lush green parks. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of rain that clung to the horizon. Alex adjusted the collar of his jacket, his reflection ghosting in the glass window beside him. His dark hair was perpetually disheveled, and the faint stubble on his jaw gave him a look that hovered somewhere between casual and unkempt. To most, he was just another face in the crowd, a linguist with a knack for unraveling alien dialects but with little flair for heroics. "Alex!" a voice called from inside the suite. He turned to see Dr. Elena Torva, the head of Earth's delegation to the Dranaxis Unity, motioning him inside. Her sharp features softened as she gave him an exasperated smile. "We're leaving in an hour. Try not to miss the transport this time." "Yes, ma'am," Alex replied, his voice laced with mock seriousness. But as he turned back to the skyline, his expression grew contemplative. Something about this trip felt different, heavier. A faint unease stirred in his chest, though he couldn't explain why. The Unity's capital was a city of wonders, its crystalline architecture shimmering under twin suns that painted the sky in hues of amber and indigo. Alex trailed behind the delegation, their formal uniforms stark against the otherworldly brilliance of the Unity's structures. The air smelled faintly of ozone and blooming flowers, an odd but pleasant combination. "Stick with the group," Dr. Torva had instructed. But Alex's curiosity got the better of him. Wandering through a narrow corridor flanked by glowing walls, he was drawn by a faint hum that vibrated through his chest like a second heartbeat. The corridor opened into a vast chamber bathed in shifting light. At its center stood Zarian Prime, its surface a liquid metal sheen that rippled with colors Alex couldn't name. It pulsed with a deliberate rhythm, like a living thing breathing in the silence. "That's, incredible," Alex murmured, stepping closer. His voice echoed softly, swallowed by the vastness of the room. "Stay behind the barrier," barked a Unity guard, his angular features sharp with irritation. Alex raised his hands in mock surrender. "Just admiring," he said, though his gaze remained fixed on the armor. There was something magnetic about it, as if it were reaching out to him. Without thinking, Alex extended a hand. His fingers brushed the barrier, a translucent shimmer of energy that should have repelled him. But instead, it collapsed in a cascade of light. Gasps echoed through the room as guards and scientists froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. "What the—" Alex began, but the words died in his throat as Zarian Prime surged forward, its liquid form enveloping his arm. The sensation was like plunging into warm water, tinged with a faint electric buzz that prickled his skin. The armor spread across his body, its surface shifting and solidifying until it encased him entirely. The room exploded with light, blinding and brilliant. When it faded, Alex stood at the center of the chamber, the armor gleaming like molten silver. He flexed his hands, the movement effortless, despite the weight of the metal. "What just happened?" he stammered, his voice reverberating faintly within the suit. Dr. Rowland burst into the room, her expression a mixture of shock and exhilaration. "It's chosen him," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the armor. "Zarian Prime has chosen its host." "Impossible," General Tharoon snarled, stepping forward. "A human? This is an insult to the Unity. Remove it." Alex raised his hands in protest. "Hey, I didn't ask for this." As if in response, the armor generated a shimmering energy shield, deflecting the general's attempt to approach. The barrier buzzed with power, sending a ripple of silence through the room. "Stand down," Dr. Rowland commanded. She approached Alex cautiously, her eyes scanning the armor with a mix of reverence and scientific curiosity. "It cannot be removed. The bond is permanent." Alex blinked, the weight of her words sinking in. "Wait, what do you mean, permanent?" "You are the host now," she said, "whether you like it or not." The room remained silent, the magnitude of the moment pressing down like a tidal wave. Alex stared at his reflection in the polished floor, the armor gleaming like a second skin. He was no soldier, no hero, just a man in the wrong place at the wrong time, or perhaps exactly where he needed to be. The silence broke with a single command from Thraxian Vel, his voice colder than the vacuum of space. "Prepare him! The Pharion swarm will not wait, and neither will we." The command chamber buzzed with a storm of overlapping voices, harsh and discordant, as if the entire council was teetering on the edge of eruption. Alex Mercer stood at its center, encased in the alien armor that felt both weightless and suffocating. The surface of Zarian Prime shimmered faintly, like molten silver under moonlight, and its constant hum vibrated in his chest, unsettling and alive. General K.L. Tharoon paced before the council, his polished obsidian armor catching the chamber's refracted light. His voice, sharp and unrelenting, cut through the chaos. "This is madness. A human? A mere diplomat at that? The armor's choice undermines everything we stand for." Chancellor Thraxian Vel, seated at the head of the council, raised a hand for silence. His expression was calm, but the hard set of his jaw betrayed his inner turmoil. "Enough, Tharan. Archeon Prime has chosen. Whether we understand or accept it is irrelevant." Tharan turned, his glare drilling into Alex like a blade. "Do you have any idea what this means, human? That armor was meant to protect our people, and now it rests on the shoulders of someone who knows nothing of war." Alex raised his hands, the armor moving with a liquid grace that felt unnervingly natural. "Look, I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice edged with exasperation. "I didn't even know this thing existed until 5 minutes ago. But if it's on me now, shouldn't we figure out why?" The hum of the armor deepened, resonating through the chamber like a low, approving note. Dr. Irixa Rallan stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Alex with a mix of awe and scientific curiosity. "The armor responds to him," she said, her voice carrying an almost reverent weight. "It chose him for a reason. Dismissing that choice could cost us everything." Tharan sneered, his hand brushing the hilt of his blade. "Perhaps it is defective." Before Alex could retort, the armor reacted. A shimmering shield of energy materialized around him, glowing faintly as if daring anyone to approach. Gasps rippled through the room. Alex stared at his hands, the translucent barrier bending under his control, and a sense of both awe and dread surged within him. "See?" Alex said, his voice shaking. "I'm not doing this. It's alive or something." Thraxian rose, his commanding presence quieting the room. "Enough debate. If Archeon Prime has chosen this man, then he must prove himself worthy. The Ferion swarm will not wait for us to deliberate." The mention of the swarm sent a chill through the chamber. Alex had seen holograms of the enemy, sprawling masses of biomechanical organisms that moved with the precision of a single mind. He imagined them bearing down on a defenseless planet, devouring its cities and consuming its people. His stomach tightened. "What do you mean, prove myself?" Alex asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Thraxian's silver eyes locked onto him. "The swarm has launched an assault on Zarian Prime, one of our outpost worlds. You will lead the defense." Alex's heart sank. "Lead? Me? I don't even know what this thing can do." Dr. Rallan stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "The armor will guide you. It adapts to its host. Trust it, and it will reveal its abilities." "Trust it?" Alex muttered, running a hand over the armor's sleek surface. It felt warm, pulsing faintly under his touch like a second heartbeat. Great. No pressure. The journey to Zarian Prime was a blur of cold steel corridors, the hum of starship engines, and the acrid scent of disinfectant that clung to every surface. Alex sat in the briefing room, his hands gripping the edge of the table as General Tharan outlined the situation. "The swarm has already breached the outer defenses," Tharan said, his voice like gravel. "Our troops are holding, but barely. We need to cut off their reinforcements and disable their hive towers before they establish full control." "And you expect me to do that?" "How exactly?" Alex asked. His voice carried an edge of sarcasm, but the fear beneath it was palpable. Tharan's eyes narrowed. "You're wearing the most advanced weapon in the galaxy. Figure it out." Dr. Rallan intervened, her tone gentler. "The armor responds to your instincts. Think of what you need, and it will adapt. Trust it, Alex. Trust." The word echoed in his mind as they descended to the planet's surface. The dropship's cabin rattled with turbulence, the acrid tang of burning metal seeping in through the vents. Outside the viewport, the once pristine cities of Zarian Prime burned, their crystalline spires shattered, and their streets teeming with Ferion drones. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the alien presence, a foul mixture of decay and electricity that made Alex's stomach churn. When the dropship landed, the chaos was immediate. The sharp whine of plasma rifles and the guttural screeches of the swarm filled the air. The ground shook with the rhythmic pounding of hive towers, massive biomechanical structures that pulsed with a sickly green light. "Stay close to me," Tharan barked, shoving a rifle into Alex's hands. "And try not to die." "Great pep talk," Alex muttered, his heart pounding in his chest. The armor hummed softly, a strange reassurance that felt more like a whisper in the back of his mind. As they advanced through the shattered streets, Alex's instincts kicked in. The armor responded seamlessly, generating shimmering energy shields that deflected incoming fire and enhancing his reflexes to inhuman levels. A Pharion drone lunged at him, its serrated limbs glinting in the dim light. Before Alex could think, the armor's surface shifted, forming a blade that sliced through the battle was a blur of heat and noise, each moment sharper and more visceral than the last. The stench of burning flesh mixed with the metallic tang of blood, and every impact reverberated through Alex's bones. The swarm was relentless, its drones moving with eerie precision, but the armor seemed to anticipate their every move. When they reached the first hive tower, Alex felt a surge of determination. The structure loomed above them, pulsating with an unnatural light. The armor reacted, amplifying his strength as he leapt onto the tower's surface. Tendrils of energy erupted from the armor, latching onto the tower and flooding it with a surge of destructive force. The tower collapsed in a deafening roar, sending a shockwave that knocked Alex to the ground. He gasped for breath, the acrid air burning his lungs. Tharan approached, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he said, though his tone was more grudging than congratulatory. Alex looked around at the destruction, the broken bodies of drones littering the streets and the distant fires casting eerie shadows. The victory felt hollow, the cost etched into every scarred surface of the battlefield. As the dropship carried them back to the fleet, Alex sat in silence, his thoughts heavy. The armor hummed softly, its energy pulsing in time with his heartbeat. For the first time, he felt the weight of its power, not as a gift, but as a responsibility. And deep within him, a question lingered. Why me? The air inside the Unity's council chamber was thick with tension, its usual hum of holographic projections punctuated by heated arguments. The scent of ionized metal hung in the air, mingling with the faint, acrid trace of ash that had been carried back by survivors from Zarian Prime. Alex Mercer sat stiffly at the center of the room, encased in Archeon Prime, the armor's liquid metal gleaming faintly under the chamber's refracted light. His hands were clasped tightly together, as though to ground himself amidst the chaos. "You've brought destruction to Zarian Prime," General Kale Tharan growled, his voice reverberating like thunder. "The tower fell, yes, but at what cost? The swarm adapts. They'll hit back harder. And this human is no savior." Alex opened his mouth to respond, but Chancellor Thraxian Vel's raised hand silenced him. The High Chancellor's face was a mask of unyielding calm, but his silver-hued skin glimmered faintly, betraying the strain beneath. "We do not debate to lay blame, General. We debate to find a way forward." "It's not debate we need," Tharan retorted. "It's strategy. If this so-called weapon is going to lead us, then it had better deliver something more than sparks and theatrics." "I didn't ask for this," Alex shot back, his voice sharp, laced with fatigue. "But I'm here now, so maybe we stop playing the blame game and focus on not getting wiped out?" Tharan's eyes narrowed, but before he could retort, Dr. Irixa Rallin stepped forward. Her dark robes rustled faintly as she moved, the embedded circuitry glowing softly in the dim chamber. "The swarm isn't just advancing blindly," she said, her tone measured. "They are targeting us with precision. That suggests intelligence, coordination beyond their hive mind." A hush fell over the room. The thought of the swarm evolving, of gaining sentience beyond their collective instinct, sent a chill through the council. Alex felt it too, a cold ripple that crept beneath the armor's warm hum. "I saw something during the battle," Alex said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, though his insides churned. "A vision, or something. The armor showed me an image of a structure, deep in their territory. I think it's connected to them." Dr. Rallin's yellow eyes sharpened, her gaze locking onto Alex. "Describe it." Alex closed his eyes, letting the memory resurface. The image was hazy, fractured, but vivid. A vast organic spire rising from a barren landscape, pulsating with an eerie green glow. "It looked alive," he said, "like their towers, but bigger, more powerful." The armor seemed to recognize it. Rallan turned to Thraxian. If this structure exists, it could be the nexus of their hive mind, a central point of control. And you want to go there? Tharun asked, his tone dripping with incredulity. Deep into enemy territory? You'd be walking into the jaws of the swarm. Maybe, Alex admitted, his voice firm. But if this thing is what's driving them, then we need to cut it off. We can't keep fighting like this, one battle at a time. They'll tear us apart. Tharun's glare deepened, but Thraxian nodded slowly. It's a gamble, the Chancellor said, his voice heavy with thought, but a calculated one. If this nexus exists, destroying it could cripple the swarm. I'll go, Alex said before he could second-guess himself. The words felt heavier than he expected, but the armor pulsed faintly, as if affirming his decision. I'll lead the mission. The chamber erupted into murmurs, some of approval, others of doubt. Tharin folded his arms, his expression unreadable, but he said nothing. Dr. Rallan stepped closer to Alex, her voice low. You'll need a team, and time. The swarm won't make this easy. Time is something we don't have, Alex replied. The preparation for the mission was a blur of activity. The Unity's capital buzzed with urgency, its crystalline spires reflecting the faint glow of the planet's twin suns. Soldiers and technicians moved with purpose, their faces drawn tight with determination. In the armory, Alex stood with Dr. Rallan and Kane Veer, a gruff engineer whose cynicism seemed to be as sharp as his intellect. This isn't just about brute force, Kane said, his hands moving deftly over a holographic display. You'll need stealth, precision, and a lot of luck. The swarm is smarter than we've given them credit for. Alex watched as Kane laid out the mission's tools, energy disruptors, cloaking devices, and a prototype weapon designed to overload the swarm's biomechanical structures. The air smelled faintly of heated circuits and lubricants, a sharp contrast to the cold, metallic scent of the armor encasing him. Do these things actually work? Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. Kane smirked. They're untested, but hey, you'll be the first to find out. Alex exhaled, his nerves fraying at the edges. The armor's hum was a constant reassurance, but the enormity of the mission pressed down on him like a weight he couldn't shake. You'll have me, a voice cut in. Alex turned to see General Tharun, his imposing frame clad in obsidian armor. The general's expression was hard, but his tone carried a grudging respect. I still don't trust you, human, but I trust results, and you've earned enough to warrant my blade. The team assembled aboard a sleek Unity frigate, its interior a blend of crystalline aesthetics and cutting-edge technology. As the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, Alex felt the faint rumble of the engines beneath his feet. The vastness of space stretched out before them, a sea of stars glittering with deceptive calm. But beyond that calm lay the swarm's territory, dark and foreboding. The mission's destination, Nick 6, was a desolate world cloaked in perpetual shadow. The atmosphere was thin and toxic, laced with a faint sulfuric scent that clung to their lungs even through their rebreathers. The terrain was a nightmare, a labyrinth of jagged cliffs and pulsating biomechanical structures that seemed to watch their every move. Alex led the team through the twisted landscape, the armor's adaptive camouflage blending them seamlessly into the shadows. The faint glow of the structures cast an eerie green light, their organic surfaces writhing with a life of their own. Every step felt like walking into the maw of a beast. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint rustle of their movements and the distant hum of the swarm's sentries. The air was thick with tension, a suffocating weight that pressed against their chests. Alex's senses were on high alert, every nerve in his body tingling as the armor whispered faint warnings in the back of his mind. When they reached the spire, it was more imposing than Alex had imagined. The structure loomed above them, a living monolith that pulsed with a rhythmic glow. The air around it buzzed with an electric charge, making the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. "This is it," Dr. Rallan whispered, her voice barely audible. She adjusted the prototype weapon, her hands steady despite the gravity of the moment. "We plant the disruptor at its base. It'll take a few minutes to activate." Minutes they didn't have. As they moved closer, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The swarm descended upon them in a wave of chittering limbs and glowing eyes, their movements unnervingly precise, the air filled with the stench of decay and the high-pitched screech of their cries. "Hold them off!" Tharin bellowed, his blade cutting through the first wave with brutal efficiency. Alex felt the armor surge to life, its energy coursing through him like a firestorm. He moved with a speed and precision that defied logic, the armor's weapons forming and reforming in response to his instincts. The battle was chaos. Blinding flashes of light, the metallic taste of blood in the air, the deafening roar of explosions. But amidst the chaos, Alex felt the pull of the spire. The armor's hum deepened, a low resonance that seemed to call him forward. As the team fought desperately to hold the line, Alex made his move, the armor propelling him toward the spire's heart. The mystery of the armor deepened with every step, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being led into something far more dangerous than they had imagined, something that would change everything. The ground beneath Alex Mercer pulsed with alien life, a rhythm that thrummed through the soles of his boots and climbed up his spine. The spire loomed ahead, its surface shifting and writhing as though alive. Tendrils of biomechanical material coiled and twisted, emitting an unsettling green light that flickered like a heartbeat. The smell of burning ozone mingled with a sulfuric tang, sharp and acrid in the thin atmosphere of Nix 6. Behind him, General Tharin slashed through a wave of Pharion drones, his blade glowing with plasma energy. Sparks hissed as the blade connected with the drone's chitinous armor, the air alive with the crackle of electricity. Dr. Irixa Rallan crouched near the base of the spire, her fingers flying over the prototype disruptor's control panel. Her face was a mask of concentration, the green glow of the spire reflecting in her yellow eyes. "This thing's systems are more complex than I anticipated," Rallan muttered, her voice tight. "The disruptor needs another 2 minutes to interface." "We don't have 2 minutes," Tharin growled, cleaving another drone in half. Its segmented body collapsed to the ground with a wet metallic thud, spilling bioluminescent ichor that filled the air with an acrid stench. Alex's focus narrowed, the armor humming with anticipation. Its whispers in his mind had grown stronger, clearer, a guiding presence urging him toward the spire. Every movement felt synchronized, every reflex sharpened. He vaulted over a cluster of drones, his energy blade forming mid-air, slicing through the mass of enemies with devastating precision. "We'll hold the line," Alex said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "You focus on the disruptor, Rallan. Tharin, cover her." Tharin gave a curt nod, his eyes flickering with grudging respect. "Don't get yourself killed, human." Alex didn't respond. He had already moved deeper into the swarm, the armor propelling him forward like a force of nature. Each step brought him closer to the spire, its energy vibrating in tandem with the armor's pulse. The air grew hotter, charged with static electricity, and the metallic tang of blood and decay filled his nostrils. The drones were relentless, their screeches piercing the air like shards of glass. They moved with terrifying precision, their serrated limbs slicing through the terrain as they closed in on the team. Alex's armor reacted instinctively, generating shields that shimmered like liquid light and deflecting the onslaught with uncanny accuracy. The sensation was surreal, an extension of himself that moved faster than thought, as though the armor anticipated his every need. Amidst the chaos, Alex's thoughts sharpened into a singular focus, reaching the core of the spire. He could feel it calling to him, a magnetic pull that resonated in his chest. The vision he'd seen earlier burned in his mind, a hazy image of a structure that was both a fortress and a brain, a nexus of control for the swarm. "Rallan!" Alex called out over the comms, his voice steady despite the storm of battle. "Once the disruptor's online, what's the plan?" Rallan's voice crackled back, tinged with urgency. "The disruptor will emit a localized pulse, disrupting the spire's neural network. It should destabilize the hive mind's coordination in this sector." "And should?" Alex asked, weaving through a barrage of energy blasts. "It's an experimental device," Rallan admitted, her tone clipped. "But if it works, the swarm in this region will collapse into disarray. buying us time to analyze their larger network. And if it doesn't? Tharoon interjected, his tone heavy with skepticism. Then we're dead, Rowland said bluntly. Alex clenched his jaw, pushing the thought aside. He had no room for doubt. The armor pulsed again, its energy surging through him like a second heartbeat. He leapt onto the spire's surface, the biomechanical material writhing beneath his boots. Tendrils lashed out, snapping like whips, but the armor reacted with ruthless efficiency. Blades formed and retracted in an instant, severing the tendrils before they could reach him. The climb was grueling. The spire's surface was slick and alive, oozing a viscous, glowing substance that clung to his hands and boots. The air grew thicker with each step, heavy with the scent of decay and the oppressive hum of the spire's energy. Alex's breaths came in sharp, shallow gasps, but the armor sustained him, its whispers urging him onward. Below, the battle raged on. Tharoon's voice barked orders, his plasma blade carving through waves of drones. Rowland's hands flew over the disruptor's controls, the device emitting a faint, rhythmic beep as it synchronized with the spire. The drones seemed endless, their relentless assault threatening to overwhelm the team. "Alex, we're running out of time!" Rowland's voice cut through the comms, sharp and urgent. "I'm almost there," Alex replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. He reached the spire's apex, where a pulsating core of green light awaited him. The sight was mesmerizing and horrifying, a mass of living energy, its surface rippling with veins of bioluminescent light. The air around it crackled with power, the heat searing against his faceplate. The armor's hum deepened, resonating in sync with the core. Alex hesitated for a fraction of a second, then reached out, his gloved hand glowing as it connected with the core. The sensation was overwhelming, a flood of energy and information surging through him, visions flashing before his eyes. He saw glimpses of the swarm's network, a web of interconnected minds stretching across galaxies, and at its center, a vast and ancient intelligence, something far beyond the drones they had faced. "Rowland, the core is linked to the disruptor," Alex said, his voice strained. "Activate it, now." "I need 30 more seconds," Rowland replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "You've got 10, Alex shot back. He could feel the core resisting, its energy pushing against him like a tidal wave. The armor struggled to maintain its grip, its hum rising into a sharp, urgent whine. The seconds stretched into an eternity. The drones surged around him, their screeches deafening as they converged on the spire. Alex's focus sharpened into a razor's edge, his every thought bent on holding the connection. The armor burned with energy, its surface shifting and glowing as it fought to contain the core's power. "Disruptor online!" Rowland's voice broke through the comms. The pulse erupted from the disruptor, a blinding wave of energy that tore through the spire and rippled across the battlefield. The ground shook violently, the air filled with the deafening roar of collapsing structures. The drones froze mid-attack, their limbs twitching spasmodically before crumpling to the ground. Alex staggered back, his vision swimming as the core's light dimmed and flickered out. The spire shuddered, its surface cracking and splitting as the energy within it dissipated. The armor's hum faded into a low, steady rhythm, its whispers quiet but reassuring. "It worked," Rowland said, her voice heavy with relief. Alex collapsed to his knees, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. The battlefield was eerily silent, the swarm's relentless assault halted in an instant. But the victory felt hollow. The cost had been high, and the visions from the core lingered in Alex's mind, a shadow of something far more dangerous waiting in the depths of the swarm's network. "We bought ourselves time," Alex said, his voice low. "But this isn't over." The eerie silence that blanketed the battlefield on Nick 6 was a fragile illusion, a brief respite before the storm. The shattered spire loomed in the distance, its jagged remnants pulsating weakly with fading energy. Alex Mercer stood amidst the wreckage, the armor's hum a low, steady rhythm in his chest, a faint beacon of life in the aftermath of chaos. His breaths were ragged, his body aching from the battle, but his mind was sharper than ever. The images from the spire's core haunted him, a stark reminder of the enormity of what they faced. "We stopped the swarm here," Alex said, his voice cutting through the heavy air as he turned to the others. "But it's not enough. The Corps wasn't just controlling the drones in this sector, it was a relay, connected to something far bigger." Dr. Irixa Rallin stood nearby, her face pale but resolute. Her fingers danced over her datapad, the soft glow of its screen casting shadows across her features. "If the network extends as far as you described, it's no longer just a threat to the Unity. It's a threat to everything." General Kael'Tharun approached, his obsidian armor streaked with the ichor of fallen drones. His expression was grim, his voice laced with the gravel of exhaustion. "So what's the plan, human? Another suicide mission?" Alex's lips tightened into a thin line, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. The armor pulsed faintly, its energy rippling through him like a second wind. "Not a suicide mission," he said. "A decisive one. We take the fight to their heart." Tharun snorted, but there was no mockery in his tone. "You mean the swarm's central nexus? The one you saw in your vision?" Alex nodded. "If we can reach it, we can destroy it. The swarm is built on their hive mind. Cut off the head and the body collapses." "That's a lot of ifs," Tharun said, crossing his arms. "And even if we find this nexus, how do we destroy it? You saw what it took just to bring down this spire." Rallin stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "The disruptor we deployed was a prototype. We have the data now. We can refine it. Build something stronger, more precise." "And you're sure it'll work?" Tharun pressed. Rallin met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "Number! But it's the best chance we have." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Alex looked between them, his own doubts clawing at the edges of his resolve. But the armor pulsed again, a quiet reassurance that steadied him. "Then we do it," he said firmly. "No more waiting, no more reacting. We hit them before they can adapt." The Unity's fleet gathered above Nick's 6, a dazzling array of crystalline ships glinting against the void. Each vessel hummed with energy, their shields shimmering faintly like liquid light. In the command deck of the Aegis Eternal, Alex stood at the center of the strategy table, his team gathered around him. The air buzzed with tension, the faint tang of recycled oxygen mixing with the sharp scent of heated metal. "This is it," Alex said, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "Our final push. The swarm's nexus is deep in their territory, protected by layers of defenses we can't fully anticipate. But if we can deliver the enhanced disruptor to their core, we end this." Rallin projected a hologram of the swarm's network, the intricate web of connections glowing ominously. "The disruptor is designed to overload their neural pathways. It'll send a cascade through the entire network, severing their coordination." "And what happens to the drones after that?" a voice asked from the edge of the room. "They'll collapse," Rallin replied. "Without the hive mind, they can't function. But the process will release an enormous energy surge. Anyone within the Nexus won't survive." A heavy silence fell over the room. Alex met their eyes, his gaze steady. "That's why I'll deliver it. The armor can handle the surge long enough to get the job done." "You're talking like this is a one-way trip," Tharun said, his voice low. Alex didn't flinch. "It might be, but it's a trip I have to take." "No," Tharun said, stepping closer. His tone was sharp, but his eyes betrayed something softer. "It's not just your fight. You're not doing this alone." Alex placed a hand on the table, the armor's surface rippling faintly. "This isn't about me. It's about everyone. The armor didn't choose me to stand here and wait. It chose me to act." Tharun's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he clasped Alex's forearm, the gesture heavy with unspoken respect. "Then let's make it count." The final approach to the Nexus was a storm of fire and chaos. The swarm's defenses erupted like a living tidal wave, their ships twisting and converging with unnatural precision. The Unity's fleet fought valiantly, their plasma cannons carving through the darkness in streaks of blinding light. The air on the Aegis Eternal trembled with the constant barrage of energy blasts, the vibrations rattling through Alex's bones. Inside the Nexus, the atmosphere was suffocating, the biomechanical walls pulsing with an unnatural glow. The faint hum of the swarm's energy filled the air, a relentless rhythm that vibrated in Alex's chest. He moved through the corridors with Tharan and Rallan at his side, their steps quick and deliberate. At the heart of the Nexus, the core awaited, a massive, pulsating sphere of energy that radiated raw power. Tendrils of light stretched from its surface, weaving through the room like a web. The air was thick with heat and the acrid scent of burning ozone. "This is it," Rallan said, her voice trembling. She began setting up the disruptor, her fingers moving with practiced precision. "I just need a few minutes." Alex stepped forward, the armor's energy flaring as he prepared to defend her. The drones converged almost instantly, their screeches cutting through the air like shards of glass. Alex moved with a fluid precision, the armor reacting to every threat with lethal efficiency. Blades formed and struck, shields deflected, and pulses of energy knocked back waves of enemies. But the swarm didn't relent. The room filled with the acrid stench of burning metal and the deafening clash of combat. Alex gritted his teeth, every muscle in his body straining as he fought to hold the line. "Rallan, how much longer?" he shouted. "Almost there," she replied, her voice tight with concentration. A massive drone surged forward, its limbs crackling with energy. Alex lunged, his blade slicing through its core, but not before it struck him with a burst of raw power. He staggered, the armor absorbing the impact but trembling under the strain. The disruptor's hum grew louder, its energy building to a crescendo. "It's ready," Rallan shouted. "We just need to activate it." Alex stepped toward the core, the armor's whispers rising into a steady chorus. He placed the disruptor against the core, its tendrils latching onto the surface. "Go," he said, his voice steady. "Get out of here." Rallan hesitated, but Tharan grabbed her arm. "We're not losing you, Mercer." "I'm not dying," Alex said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I'm finishing this." The disruptor activated, a blinding surge of energy erupting through the Nexus. The drones froze mid-attack, their bodies convulsing as the network collapsed. The core shuddered, its light flickering wildly, and Alex felt the surge rip through him. The armor pulsed, absorbing the energy, holding it just long enough. The last thing Alex saw was the core fracturing, its light fading as the Nexus crumbled around him. When Alex opened his eyes, the battlefield was silent. The swarm was gone, their bodies lifeless. The Unity's fleet hovered above, victorious. The armor hummed faintly, its energy depleted but alive. "You did it," Tharan said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Alex nodded, the weight of the moment sinking in. "We all did." As the survivors returned to the Unity, Alex looked toward the stars. The armor's whispers were quiet now, but he felt its presence, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't power or technology, but the will to endure, the will to fight for something greater. "Why me?" he asked the armor quietly. Its faint hum seemed to answer. "Because you see beyond yourself." And as Alex stood beneath the shimmering light of the Unity's capital, he finally understood. The armor had chosen humanity not for its strength but for its heart, the ability to unite, to inspire, to hope. And in the end, that was what saved them all.